welcome to Celtic State of Mind. It's Friday and that means I am joined by Tony Haggerty. How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, Laura. Yourself?
Not too bad. I am, of course, Laura Bradburn, always here on the Friday Bulletin, or when I can be, when there's not all sorts else going on in the world. But yeah, love to be back talking Celtic with you. Thanks everybody for getting in the chat. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. I forget the number of places that you can watch us, but it's all the same wherever you do. So we still talk the same amount of rubbish, don't we, Tony?
Oh, very much so. I'm fluent in that. Fluent in authentic frontier gibberish. If you're also fluent in Blazing Saddles, you'll get that reference.
Plenty to talk about. Obviously, as you can see in the strap, like we'll be looking ahead to the Dundee United match on Monday night. I think it is. I'm terrible for not getting my days right, but I think it is Monday night.
Monday night.
So we'll look ahead at that selection, where it leaves us in terms of the hunt for the treble, which is now, of course, definitely a treble after going out the Europa League, and what Ange's selection is. A couple other talking points to go over before then, obviously. First of which, Tony, I wanted to come to you and get your thoughts on... we talk about not looking too far back in the past or not looking in the past at all and looking to the future always. But, as Celtic supporters, it's part of our nature to look back. Ex-captain Scott Brown, who obviously won tens of trophies with us over a 14-year spell with the club, left his coaching/playing role at Aberdeen during the week after discussions with the club and following the exit, obviously, of the manager that brought him, Stephen Glass. As is natural, there have been rumours. I've heard rumours about, possibly a post for him in the youth setup, a post in the coaching setup, even first team duties, that kind of thing. Where do you stand on that as a kind of policy for the club to look at bringing him back? Is it something you would welcome, or is it something we should steer clear of? What do you think?
No chance. He has to be welcomed back. You look at the manager's comments yesterday, he'll always be welcome back here. That's a big voice and a big influence at the club. Maybe not this season, but in the summer, if he's not gainfully employed somewhere, bring him back, shoehorn him in, because I think he'd be a wonderful character and person with loads of experience to have in your coaching team. And he's just revered at Celtic, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Now, we need to kind of create a space, captain, leader, legend, coach, oblique manager, whatever you want to call him. And it just seems a kind of natural fit, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. That Scott Brown will come back to Celtic, and it would be as if he'd never really been away, to be honest. I don't think anybody ever got used to him in an Aberdeen jersey, but you don't deny him his right to try and further his career and go and learn the ropes and to be a coach and a manager. And, he had what it took to be a successful footballer at the highest level. And I just think that determination and that grit will be there within him again to prove that he can be a top-level coach, manager, whatever he wants to be. And I think he has something to offer. And I think he has something to offer Celtic. At this particular juncture, I would let Ange and the boys get on with what they've started, finish what they've started, and then in the summer I'd maybe think about bringing them back to the fold and saying, okay, let's do this. You're back. Give us that influence, give us that voice, and we work in tandem from then on. That's my thoughts on it.
It is an interesting one because I'm kind of conflicted. Obviously, from a playing point of view, I think he was... he was done for a wee while before he left, and I definitely don't think he would keep up with the pace that we're trying to do under Ange in terms of a playing style if you were thinking of bringing him back as a player or anything. But I do agree that there's an off the pitch influence and there's a level of experience that he has that you could probably make use of. I'm the same as you though. I'm kind of umming and ahhing about when would be the right time. I think bringing anybody in and a personality as big as his at this stage of the season might just upset the apple cart a wee bit, and maybe getting him in the door to get to know the players over a summer period when he's got a bit more time would probably be a good call. I think that's probably where I agree with you as well.
It isn't broke at this moment in time, Laura, so it doesn't need fixed. And also, Ange and background boys have been there since the start of the season. So I would let them finish what they've started. I don't think Scott Brown has any intention of being a player. I think he wants to concentrate now on his badges and becoming a coach, manager, whatever he wants to be. So that's the Scott Brown you'd be taking on. But I firmly agree with you. As I said there, I think it should be looked at again in the summer. And I think Scott Brown would be wise to take up Brendan Rodgers in his offer. Go down and have a look at that setup, just see how a top club works. Go a wee tour or whatever of clubs and maybe in Europe and see how they function and just get a feel for it. You know, how various setups operate. And then in the hope that in the summer that he might come back to Celtic. I think people feel that he maybe has unfinished business at Celtic. You never get the chance to say cheerio properly and all that. And, you know, there was always that kind of feeling that he left, you know, and not the greatest of terms, and it was all abrupt and it was all too sudden. And I think he would be welcomed by it's the prodigal son stuff, isn't it? Really, you know what I mean? It's he is a huge part of Celtic's success in the last 2 decades. You know, so it's.
I think as well with the whole COVID thing. You know, regardless of, it would have been sad to see him go anyway, given the way this last season went. Anybody leaving in that circumstance would have been going in a kind of less than ideal situation, and that would have been sad. But I think with COVID especially, and the fact that there weren't fans in the stadium or not in any great numbers at the time that he was leaving, he didn't really get the send-off that somebody of his level of service deserved. And I did see an interesting idea on Twitter during the week that I thought might be a good idea, is like, regardless of what happens with him in the future, regardless of whether he comes back to us or whether he doesn't, it would be nice to get him back as like a kind of guest of honour for a game and just get him out on the pitch at half time and do a round of applause or let him speak to the fans. Do you not think that's something that at the very least we could do for him?
Yeah, I think if it doesn't work out that he comes back in a coaching capacity in the summer, then I'm sure that could be arranged, no problem. But as I say, I don't think this season's the time for sentiment with regards to Scott Brown.
Yeah.
Business, because we're at the business end of the season. I think Ange's very much of that ilk as well. But when he was asked a straight question yesterday, he said there will always be a welcome for Scott Brown. Of course there will. So I think maybe he was thinking in the future. But Celtic, as the strap line says, Celtic got a treble to focus on winning. Don't want any Scott Brown sideshow at this moment in time. We'll wait till the end of the season and then we can have the Scott Brown coming back to Celtic if he's not gainfully employed. Thank you very much. But if you're asking me, would I welcome him back? Should he come back? The answer is yes, in the affirmative. Just not now. Let the people that are running the club get on with the job that they've started, and we focus on that. And I think that has to be what everybody's attention is on at this moment in time. I'm sure it will be. Don't need me to tell them that, but you know, you don't want distracted by anything. And I think Scott Brown, as you said, he's a big voice, he's a big character. It might be an unwanted distraction at this moment in time. So we'll revisit it in the summer. And hopefully not employed by anybody and he can come back.
Well, that's true. It's a point I totally agree with, and I think I raised it numerous times with previous managers and previous players and things like that. I do think as a fan base and as a club, sometimes we are very run by sentiment and driven by sentiment, and sometimes you need to put that aside, not forever, but for now, kind of thing. And like you say, get business done and get things over the line. Because let's not forget, you know, we're in the middle of turning round perhaps what is one of the biggest turnarounds in our history in terms of, compared to where we were last season, what we're potentially able to do this season. And so anything that distracts from that's obviously going to be a disadvantage. I wanted to bring up a couple of comments from the viewers. Thanks everybody for commenting on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, wherever you're commenting. Some conflicting ones, right enough, so we'll go for it. But James Maguire says Brown would be a great personality to have around the club at this stage of the season. His experience speaks for itself, and he's been in this situation in the past in terms of a title run. I mean, I do agree with that to an extent, but I think, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps his level of experience or his level of respect is not going to be as high amongst this particular squad of players, because look at the turnaround of players we've had, for example. Scott Brown wouldn't have played with probably the majority of players that are in that squad at the moment.
Yeah, I don't deny what the view was commented as saying there, but I just think at this moment in time, Celtic are too far down the road with what they've done so far and what they've achieved so far. And I wouldn't want any kind of focus of attention to be taken away from what they're trying to do. And I think Scott Brown coming in, it would just blow it sky high. It would be great. I get his influence and experience, but, you know, Callum McGregor's been a captain in his own right this season. He stepped into that role perfectly since Brown abdicated it. You know, how would he feel about, you know, the guy whose role and armband that you've taken coming in? You know, there's all sorts of things you need to... I get what Scott Brown brings to the party, but you've got to think about others in this situation. You've got to think about that team as well. You've got to think about the management team. And in respect, you know, Celtic have coped admirably well since Scott Brown left the building. So I don't think there's a pressing need or a necessity to get him back. You know, if you're talking about 8 games, a possible quarter-final, semi-final, finals, say they get through the quarter-final, 10 games. So is he really that vital for the next 10 games, considering where Celtic have come from since June under the present managerial regime? So it's not for me right now, but I'm not ruling it out in the summer. If he's, as I say, he's still available, I would get him back in, because I think he has got an important role to play with that experience and the voice and the leadership qualities that he undoubtedly has. But not at this moment in time. I think we just focus on 8/10 games, or 9, 10, 11, quarter-final, semi-final, final, Scottish Cup, should you be fortunate enough to get there. That's Celtic's focus now, not on Scott Brown, just on basically keeping the treble dream alive.
Exactly. Just interesting that you make those points. Alan Robertson says Scott B needs to take some time out and think about what he really wants to do long term. Let's get Scott back in a few years, which I think is agreement. And you touched on it there, but just to pose the question a bit more specifically, and we'll close out in the Scott Brown stuff after this. If Scott B came back straight away, how would this affect Callum Mack? Would he feel undermined at all? My personal opinion on that is, I think Callum McGregor's too much of a professional to let it affect him all that much. What might be going on behind closed doors might be different, though.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I wouldn't want to test the waters on that, Laura.
Yeah.
Because he's functioning fine, isn't he? He's really grown into the captain's role, and the Celtic fans have taken to him. So again, it would be a wee bit of a circus and a sideshow, and you might get kind of negativity emanating from that he feels undermined, and you just don't need anything like that as Celtic are, you know, homing in the title just now, you know, so and a potential Scottish Cup win. So just, as I say, I'm a bit Ange-like with this. Get the business head on, you know, just let's peak at the time of the season where he wants Celtic to peak, and be there when the prizes have been handed out, all of the prizes, you know, be there and just make your presence felt. So yeah, there'll be a time for Scott Brown to come back. It's just not now.
Yes, I think we're in agreement with that. If not now, certainly in the future. We'll move on from Scott Brown though, because I'm sure it won't be the last time we speak about him. But for now, we'll move on. Tony, I know you obviously will have spoken a little bit about this in Monday's bulletin, but as I always like to do, for my own selfish reasons and for the viewers on a Friday who might not have watched on Monday, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Livingston game. We were on the Friday bulletin last week, you know, very concerned about, you know, I know we called it hoodoo or whatever you want to call it, but, you know, the Tony Macaroni Stadium has been a difficult place for us to go. We won in what I would suggest is the most convincing manner we've ever played there in years. What did you make of the performance, and where do you think it sits for us in terms of significance going into this last run of games for the end of the season? I think
it sets Celtic up brilliantly for the last run of games. There was no question that kind of voodoo, call it what you like, bogey was being exercised on Sunday. They just went about their business with a vim, a vigour, a zest, gusto, call it what you like. I just said it there. Every Celtic player had the business head on, Every Celtic player was an 8 out of 10, 7 or 8 out of 10. You could argue maybe a couple were 9s, but that's the kind of performance that we need from them. And in the most unlikely of venue, but they chose to turn up the heat, and it was a statement win, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're in here fighting for this title. We're a good team. We're going to show you we're a good team. And anybody that thought we're going to lose points here or slip up again, you've not been paying attention. The manager's learning all the time. So he's shown us how he's learned, and he went and set about them. And even when Callum McGregor missed a penalty, I never ever thought, oh no, it's going to be one of those days. I thought, there's a goal coming, which I've never ever felt, well, I've not felt for a long time when we played at Livingston. But from the moment they took to the park, and even Jota's early ball across the face, when you were probably screaming for Maeda to be there and shouting, Kyogo would have been there. But it would just set the kind of tone for what I thought was a tremendous performance. And it showed them that, this is the business end. There's 8 to go. See if we play like that, who's going to stop them from being champions?
Mm-hmm.
Not getting ahead of themselves, but just in terms of the attitude and the application they showed against Livingston. And I was going to ask him, but I thought I'll just let him be happy. The lack of spark that was evident at Easter Road, it was there in abundance in West Lothian last Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped short of saying that lack of spark that was last week. Was it there this week? But I refrained just in case he bit my head off again. He was in a good mood, so I'll probably get away with it. But no, I think Ange himself, because of that, he was delighted with the way they went about their business. I thought it was a cracking performance.
Mm-hmm.
And people pointed to refereeing decisions. Yeah, it wasn't a corner that led to the first goal, but as Ange himself said yesterday, you're nitpicking because you need to defend. We're not dissecting the game. It's referee watch then. As he said, if you dissect the game, Celtic never won the game because of refereeing decisions. They won the game because they were the better team, and Livingston couldn't cope with them. End of story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally in agreement about the refereeing decisions in terms of, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure somebody can find a clip or a tweet or something that proves me to be an absolute hypocrite in what I'm about to say, but aren't we all? I do think with refereeing decisions like that one, sometimes you ride your luck, sometimes you get a decision that shouldn't have gone your way that does, but ultimately it's what you do with that then that makes a difference. Yeah. If Livingston put that out their heads and say that wasn't a corner but that it's been given so we're going to defend it, then maybe it doesn't become a goal. The only reason they're complaining is because it was an inadvertently awarded corner, which we then scored from. And let's all face it, if you're a team conceding a set piece against Celtic, you're not a very good defensive team.
Well, yeah, it's usually the other way about, isn't it? And it had Livingston defended the way they defended against Celtic teams in the past, they wouldn't have conceded. So, listen, it wasn't refereeing decisions that won Celtic the game last week. Celtic were far superior. Even David Martindale admitted that. He said they had to deal with those adverse decisions. You need them to go for you on days like that against Celtic and Rangers, things like that. But he said their team could have done better, but he said they were outplayed by a good Celtic team. And he thought Celtic brought their A game to West Lothian, which was kind of a touch of respect to Livingston and what they'd achieved against them in the past. So I thought he was pretty fair and measured. Of course, you're going to mention refereeing decisions that go against you. Why wouldn't you? You're sticking up for your team, But he was pretty emphatic that Celtic won because they were by far the better team, and I don't think anybody can dispute that.
I don't think anybody can dispute it either. I'm just looking at the statistics here from last week as well, and I know it doesn't make a huge difference sometimes, but hey, we've got no Alan Morrison today, so I'll do my best. 82% possession for us. Now, you can have the ball all you want, it's what you do with it that matters, but I mean, that just is a sign of the dominance that we had. You can't win the game if you've not got the ball, and I think that's what Livingston were struggling with. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, just looking back at the lineup, just looking at some of the changes that were made during the game, some of the players that featured. Everybody talked about the fact that Maeda started the game, And we've got in the strap line here. Will Ange opt for Maeda or Giakoumakis on Monday? We'll get to the team selection for Monday later on, but Maeda's faced a lot of criticism recently from myself included for being a bit of a busy bee, and that he looks busy, he looks as if he's working hard, and very often he is, but you don't really see what the outcome of that is. He proved everybody wrong with that against Livingston with the goals, and I thought he was really outstanding. Do you think he's maybe finally finding his feet in a Celtic shirt?
I thought he was terrific on Sunday, and it's like everything else. You need a confidence boost. Like, he got the early goal against Hibs, and everybody, we've got another Kyogo in our hands. Two different type of players, right? But and then when he didn't score prolifically after that, people were saying, he's not Kyogo, and he'd been unfairly compared to Kyogo, and that was unfair. And he does a power of work, does a power of grafting, and it's the dirty side of the game, not dirty as in dirty tactics, but the side of the game that people don't like doing, shutting down opponents. He never gave the Livingston defence a moment's peace. And for the ball that came across and Jota and everyone shouting he should have been there, he was there when Starfelt's header was saved by the goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
He got himself into various positions like that in the game and didn't receive the ball, but he was still getting himself in there, and he was still chasing and harrying and knocking his pan in for the team cause. So I was delighted with Maeda last week, and also delighted for him personally that he got a goal, because you saw how much it meant to him as well, his celebration, and he was just kind of more a relief than anything else, because people's personal jury was out on him, saying what does he bring. I think you saw on Sunday what he brings. Is he the prolific type? Arguably no. But will he score when you need him to? Some important goals? Yeah, he will. Will he put in a shift? Yeah, he will. Is that all you can ask from him? Yeah, it is. So I think he more than kind of, say to the doubters, look, I can perform and I can step up to the plate when needed. So I think a lot of people just need to maybe get off his back and just cut him a bit of slack. Because bearing in mind, he's played a full season in Japan. So there might well be lethargy and fatigue issues. I don't know, but the manager seems to like him, and the manager seems to give him the nod quite a lot, doesn't he? So you trust the manager on these things, and I think a lot of people wanted to see Giakoumakis after his hat trick against Dundee, and it's now. I think after that hat trick, people were saying, Giakoumakis is a definite number 9 starter or centre forward starter, but after last week, Maeda's given the manager another headache. And I'm kind of the opinion, well, if you don't do anything wrong, you stay in the team. But the manager likes to rotate a lot. So even when players haven't done wrong or whatever, or you've not had a bad game. So it's a real toss-up for Monday night. But I think he might just keep Maeda in the side because his confidence levels are up. I could be wrong on that, and a lot of people might want to see Giakoumakis back, but I'm of the opinion that Maeda was very good against Livingston, and I'd give him another shout again to start.
The other encouraging thing, obviously, and we'll talk about the Dundee United game coming up, is any players who we've seen, maybe tiring a little during that dip in form, they've had a full week now to recover from the last game, over a week by the time the game comes, and that will be invaluable towards the end of the season. But going back to Maeda for a second, Acrobat on YouTube says you can't criticise Maeda, the work rate he puts in goes unnoticed. Ange brought him here because of that fact, not just for his goals. I think he's in agreement with you there, Tony. And another one here from Carl Nemso, who says Maeda is crucial. He does so much work forcing the opposition defenders to make decisions sooner than they want to. I think it's maybe one of these situations where sometimes you're just as an invested football supporter, perhaps if I saw Maeda in another team, I would think, he's useful. But when you're a Celtic supporter and you're just wanting us to get up the park and put the ball in the net, sometimes your judgment on these things is a little bit clouded.
Players can be undervalued and underappreciated. I think what Maeda brings to the table thus far, up until last Sunday, had been undervalued and underappreciated, but not by the man that matters most, the manager. So again, you bow to that superior knowledge, and you say, okay, he's in the team for a reason. he was in the team for a reason last week, and he came up trumps, didn't he? And I think a lot of people's opinion or attitude maybe changed towards Maeda last week, because he really did. It was a kind of, say, the total complete performance, but it was a very good one. And from the get-go, he was just at it, and that's what you want. And from somebody who has played a full season in Japan and has come to a new footballing culture and maybe taken a wee bit of time to adapt, it's good to see that he's now showing signs of feeling settled, and he looks happy as well, doesn't he? So he was delighted to score, and maybe a kind of wee bit of relief, as I said. But, when you're a Celtic striker, you're always going to be judged in goals. But I think also part of the modern day game is to shut down and to lead the line and do all sorts of stuff. So I think in that situation, he was terrific, and he wasn't found wanting. So if he can add goals prolifically, then I think we'll all say that, yep, we should definitely sign him up at the end of the season, make the deal permanent. But I don't think he's done anything wrong to suggest that they shouldn't sign him up permanently, because I like him. I like what he brings in terms of his attitude and application, his spirit and his energy. And he's a defender's nightmare.
Yes.
And I'm sure the goals will come once he just kind of learns to, Celtic's style of play, which he's getting a better handle on game by game.
Yeah, I'd always had the impression with him that the loan signing, different to Jota's, but the loan signing was more of a loan to buy type thing rather. I don't know why I particularly had that in my head, but I always did think that was perhaps maybe because he's coming from another continent, a long way away, and kind of thing. There's more invested in a move like that perhaps your appreciation of what's gone into that is that there's probably an eye on a permanent move there. So we'll see what happens. But I think he's definitely, and the thing is, for those of us, or for anybody who said he's not scoring goals, I mean, he's chipped in with a fair few so far this season. I don't know the exact number, but it's not as if he's absolutely barren in front of goal either. He's been getting a fair few, compared to the number of minutes he's played as well. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks everybody for watching. We're going to move on to another topic. One of my favourites, although people here get bored of hearing me talk about it, David Turnbull. Ange was asked this week about the chance of an appearance this weekend against Dundee United, and he said it's too soon for Bull. He called him Bull, which I quite liked. I never thought about that. Too soon for Bull. The plan is with him that he's going to train with the first team after the Monday game, and we'll see how we go from there. He's almost back to full training with the team. The reason I wanted to bring this up, Tony, was we've kind of touched on it briefly at points throughout the last couple of months. When Rio Hatate came in, when Matt O'Reilly came in, when we made a lot of signings in January, and then to David Turnbull's dismay, he ends up with an injury, probably exactly the worst time. Never a good time, obviously, for an injury, but the worst time. There's a suspicion for me that he's going to find it very difficult to get back into this team. Either because they're playing so well, or because, in my estimation, he maybe plays a little bit slower than the majority of this team and needs to up the tempo of the way that he plays. But there's no doubt that as a ball-playing midfielder, he's one of the best at the club. So where do you stand on David Turnbull, a fully fit David Turnbull? Where does he fit in this squad and in this team?
I thought you just brought up the word bull because I like to talk a lot of it. You know what I mean? I'm sure the viewers will agree. Well, I think David Turnbull sat back and watched that Celtic team perform to the best of its ability at times, and realises what he needs to do to be part of that. You get the best view in the house when you're sitting watching, and you're injured, unfortunately. So he knows that the bar's been raised, and he knows that he would have to raise his own game and his own performance levels. But with every injured player, you've got a duty of care, and I think Celtic have did the right thing with Turnbull and not rushed him back, and not and he'll be back when he's back. The Bull will be back, as the manager says, when he's back. So, but I think if you're clever, which I think David Turnbull is, you'll be sitting there observing, you'll be taking everything in like a sponge, you'll be seeing what the manager's saying to the players, the midfielders that float to the field every time your names are starting 11. He'll be observing what the manager's asking of them, and so he'll know exactly what's required when he comes back into the team. He is a ball-playing midfielder. Does he slow the play down? Yeah, but that's what playmakers tend to do. But I tell you what we have missed in terms of David Turnbull, somebody to have a dig from 25, 30 yard range on a consistent basis. That alone, a criticism myself to this season is nobody has a pot shot from 25, 30 yards, and David Turnbull used to do it a lot, and he got decent success rate, but he can put them in the top corner. Tom Rogic does it now and again, and his success rate's not bad when he tries it, so I think if you can bring somebody like David Turnbull back, knowing the levels that he has to reach in order to make a valid contribution, allied to the fact that he likes a dig at goal, then I think we're in good shape. I look at it last week and we substituted. Who do we substitute? Forrest, Maeda, and
Forrest, Maeda, and Rogic.
And we brought on O'Reilly, Giakoumakis, and Abada. Like for like.
Yeah.
No quality for quality.
We also took off McGregor and put on Hatate as well.
So, when Turnbull will be eased back into the fold, you will be taking off a midfielder and bringing on David Turnbull. So it will be quality like for like swap with the strength and depth that they now have. So I don't have any qualms about whenever David Turnbull comes back. My only reservation is when you come back, you're going to have to make a valid contribution in order to stay in the team. So it could be a good thing that Turnbull's had this extended period out and he's watched all these guys come in and he's sort of saying to himself, okay, I know exactly what's required, and you'll get a hungry Turnbull coming back, I would have thought, or somebody who a lot of the Celtic supporters are still kind of, I'm not so sure. I think he's a smashing footballer. I've never doubted his ability. But now I want to see Turnbull coming back in and saying, do you know what? I'm worthy of a place in this starting 11, and here's why. And I think that's a good thing. I think the manager's kind of fostered that spirit of real competitiveness. He's forever telling you that it's fiercely and ferociously competitive at training, isn't he? So he likes to tell you that. So that's a good thing, because you're trying to replicate game situations. So if Turnbull's coming back into that, then there's no rest for the wicked. Get straight back in and do your thing, and let's see what you got.
Absolutely, I would totally agree with that. Lots of comments coming in on the David Turnbull topic. Aaron L agrees. Turnbull banging a few goals when he's back, very valuable player, which I don't disagree with. Then we've got David Turnbull was an excellent before he got injured. I don't buy this that he won't get back into the team. Mirror this with Ewan Boy Martin, who says Turnbull will struggle to get back into the team. We'll have to be patient. So it's a wide and varied church here at Celtic, or at ACSOM, I should say. The support have opinions that vary greatly, and it's great to see them all. But this one from Brown Warrior, Tony, I wanted to bring it up, says, directed to me, but I'll open the floor, shall we say. Turnbull is still developing at Celtic. He needs time under Ange to become the player we hope he can. Now, I understand, Tony, that players take time to adapt to new managers. Players take time to adapt to new styles of play. I, for one, think Turnbull adapted well and was playing well before his injury. Not to say that the replacements haven't taken it up another level, like you said, but I don't think there's a need for him necessarily to adapt any more than a player normally adapts throughout their career. I think he is a full-fledged footballer at this point. He's represented his country at a major tournament and all that kind of stuff. Or no, did he actually? Have I just said that and that's not true?
Certainly in the squad, wasn't he? I don't know if he played.
Yeah, but I was maybe dreaming that one. I don't know. But yeah, what I was going to say is I sometimes get this feeling with players like him where there's a narrative ongoing. You see it with Mikey Johnston a lot as well, that they get to a certain age of like, oh, they're still developing, they're still young, they're this or that. For me, somebody of David Turnbull's age and experience should be a fully fledged player, which I think he is.
Yeah, listen, when David Turnbull comes back, he'll be a victim of rotation as well. It's just the way the manager plays games. He's a horses for courses type manager, and he will come in and he'll play his part. But in order to stay in the team, you have to, as I say, make a valid contribution. I don't know necessarily if he'll struggle, because Ange seems to like him, because he's called him many things. The Bull being the latest. Dave, I think he's called him as well, and Davey or whatever. So he's got. But Ange liked him from the start, because he always said that Turnbull was one of these players who was very critical of himself, which Ange kind of quite liked. I remember he spoke about him earlier, and he said, I think it was when he got a hat-trick or something, or just after he got the hat-trick, and he said, he's always critical of his own performance, and I tell him not to be too hard on himself. But Ange likes that in players, that humility that I can do better. So I get back to it. Turnbull now knows what he has to do better in order to be in that side. And Ange will give him his chance at some point when he's fit to be in that side, because that's what he does. Ange himself wants to see what Turnbull will bring to the table. He knows that when somebody's been out for a lengthy period of time with an injury, then you're kind of a bit wary about them being the same when they come back, hitting those levels, or being a bit wary, within the player himself about going in for a tackle or whatever it is. But I think Turnbull's a naturally gifted footballer. I think he'll enhance the Celtic team. Don't think he was doing too much wrong when he was unfortunate to get injured. But it's like everything else. Celtic supporters have opinions, and you touched on it there. Some players become, I hesitate to use the phrase whipping boys, but they become the target of fans' ire. And I think Turnbull was one of those targets at one point. The fans' ire about, the play becomes too slow. He's not an Ange type player when they're this fast, zipping it about, tempo, all that kind of thing. So, but I still think that Turnbull's got a valuable role to play in this team. And anybody that can leather a ball like he does with accuracy from 25, 30 yard range, that's an asset to anybody's football team. And he's a pretty forward thinking midfielder. So when you're on the park, he will have a dig at some point when he gets the ball out of his feet and just rasp it, and he's capable of it. So I think that there's, like Ange said about Forrest, I think there's a lot of football left in Turnbull, and lots of big moments in his Celtic career to come. And anybody who's writing him off and saying, he's going to struggle, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I would like to agree with that and think that that's going to be the case. But until we see him back, we have games to play in the meantime. First one being our Scottish Cup tie against Dundee United on Monday night. We'll get to up front the Maeda or Giakoumakis question soon. But looking ahead to the tie on Monday night, Tony, obviously the game in and of itself is important for the tournament, and that's understandable. But in the context of the season, do you think the players are thinking treble at this point, or are they thinking, let's win this game and see how far we get? Like, I know you're working football journalism. You might have a little bit of a better idea than me about, how the politics of a dressing room works, or the motivation of a dressing room works, that, they say all these things to the outside world about, we're taking it one game at a time, but is it in their heads, do you think, that there might be a treble in the cards here?
Of course it is, right? First and foremost, but rule one of treble club, nobody talks about the treble, right? Publicly, inwardly, the manager's saying, we're in here fighting for all three tournaments. We want to win all three tournaments. This is why I've trained you this way. This is why we're coming to peak condition, peak fitness at this stage of the season. We want to be there when the prizes are handed out. Make sure you're there. Enough said. Right, that's it. We'll have that conversation. But outwardly, it's focus on the next game. But it's human nature to start thinking about trebles, isn't it? When you're three clear with 8 to play and you're in the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup, fine, right? You can make a, carve your name into history at Celtic. So that's human nature. But you don't get carried away. Don't get ahead of yourself. The manager will have said that we're in here fighting. We can do this. We know we can do this. Let's prove how good we are. But the next one's Dundee United. Focus on Dundee United. And it is that. That's why you get players saying that bland, one game at a time stuff, and journalists constantly probing them and say something different. But they're programmed, right? Very few break from the ranks, unless you're Georgios Giakoumakis and say, we're going to win the lot, we're better than everybody, which was, he'd gone rogue, I think, Georgios Giakoumakis, but he was only saying what he was feeling at the time. Yeah. But I think you'll find Giakoumakis will not do press between now and the end of the season. for that very reason, right? You let slip too much. You broke the rule of Treble Club, by spouting it.
I was going to ask you that as well after the Giakoumakis thing, so I don't think we've had a chat since then. I will get back to the game in a second, but I just found it very interesting because my opinion of you as a journalist would be that is, as you would say, manna from heaven. You would love to write about that stuff.
Yeah. We at that point you're doing the grease dance, keep talking, and so you're pumping questions into him, so he will keep talking. That's your job, okay? But in terms of the message from Celtic, I mean, the PR person at Celtic, or the Celtic would have sat there like that. Oh no, you know what I mean? But these things happen. But I can understand why he did it. He just scored the perfect hat trick. He was up there.
Yeah.
So he was being truthful to himself. It's how he felt in that moment. I think we're a better team. We're better than our rivals. So he said it. Can we win the league? Yeah, we can win the league. I expect to win whatever it is he said. We're going to win the league, whatever. So I don't think you can hold a grudge against him for saying those things because it's how he felt in the moment. I think managers tear their hair out at that because the drill is say nothing, one game at a time, keep the high balls low and the low balls high type thing, you know what I mean? So, but players sometimes, as I say, some of them go rogue and just go off message, off piste, and as a journalist you're like, yes, thanks very much. That's good, because that's your job to get them to say something that you don't know. Yeah, tell you something new. The bland one game at a time, over the moon, sick as a parrot stuff. You're just like, oh wow, how do you fashion 1,000 words out of that? And we're not there to trick them or upset them or annoy them. We're just there to ask questions that they're grown men at the end of the day. They can answer them whatever way, shape they see possible. But if they know that they're going to get a flea in the ear for the manager, a lot of players are, frightened to say something. Others don't care. Others are just like, you've asked me a question, I'll answer it honestly. So we're there doing our job, and it's remiss of us if you don't do your job. A lot of people disagree. The kind of questions that you ask, that's fine. And people will have their views on journalists, certain journalists and certain media. I get all that, but I should say, I'm not there to upset players or annoy them or trip them up. I'm there to get, as you say now and again, some manna from heaven, if you can. And I get that it's every right's player to shut you down and play the one game at a time card, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But as I say, it's you're not committing any crime. You're just asking them questions about football, and they can answer them if they want. But some people find it hard when you've got dictaphones thrust in your face, and and there's about 15 or 20 people hanging on to your every word, and that whatever you say might, by unscrupulous ones of the press, get spun into something that maybe doesn't reflect what you said. So a lot of them like to do it live, the whole Zoom thing and all that, where people can watch it. You can see exactly the way it was said in the context it was asked. I get all that too, but it's never been my MO to annoy players or upset them, or I'm just too engrossed in the game or what they did, or as you say there, I mean, why wouldn't you ask somebody like Giakoumakis if you could win the lot if he was standing in front of you right now? It's a perfectly legitimate and normal question to ask a Celtic player at this moment in time, is it? Can you win the lot? They don't need to answer it.
Yeah. I think the thing as well is, I mean, my brother watches a lot of American sports, and there's a lot about American sports that I don't like, but one of the things I do like is some of the player interviews and some of the manager interviews are so bombastic and over the top confidence and stuff like that. They're like, okay, sometimes it's off-putting, sometimes they get made a fool of by going all out in their interviews saying that they're going to do this, that and the next thing to the other team, and then they get handsomely beat. But my God, it makes for entertaining viewing.
I covered the Scottish Claymores franchise when it was in Scotland, and all of the guys were American players and foreign players playing in the NFL Europe League. And some of the interviews were terrific because they genuinely didn't care. They would tell you anything. And it was pretty refreshing that way. And you think you would conduct them in the locker room, as they called it. So they would take you down and they would say to you, who do you want to speak to? We would like to speak to whoever. And there he's there. You know, a guy played like however many minutes on the football fan, he'd be standing there sometimes with a towel wrapped around him and stuff. You know, can you imagine going to the Celtic dressing room and saying, I'd like to speak to Callum McGregor? There he's there. You know? And it was just a bizarre culture, journalistic culture to even myself. And it was free reign. It wasn't just that you had one guy that you could speak to. You could speak to them all because the American football team said it's your duty to speak to the press and to inform the public your thoughts on anything. You get hammered. You know, it didn't matter. You know, if you asked to speak to a player, you were granted that access. And I was just astounded by that whole kind of American football and basketball and journalistic culture. And I just thought, it would never happen here, you know. That's definitely, like after Livingston last week, who do you want to speak to? Everybody. Yeah, I want to go. You know, we were brought James Forrest, and that's it. You get like 5 minutes of James Forrest. So you're conscious of that too. So you're pumping questions into, you know, Forrest, and I think he'd scored his 96th goal. So it's only natural you're going to say, well, are you targeting 100 before the end of the season? Because you're trying to think as well, you know, to make something interesting from it. Whereas if they bring a procession of players, then you would do it in order of kind of, well, that was a good interview, that was just a great, that kind of thing. But when you're specifically handpicked one person, it makes your job a wee bit more difficult. You know, Ange's always great value. You know somebody's going to ask a silly question, like I did at Easter. It wasn't a silly question, it was a legitimate one, but it was the one that he bristled at, you know. So he's not always going to do that, but you know you're going to get good value from Ange because he's great in a press situation, you know. So you always get manna from heaven, or you get a kind of a bristly, narrowed side of Ange, and you just know it's going to fill your pages.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Tony, I could listen to your stories from over the years from now to Kingdom Come, but we must get back to talking about the proper football for the last 10 minutes. We've got Dundee United coming up. So just looking at the team from Livingston last week, just running through it quickly, we had Joe Hart in goal, we had Greg Taylor, Starfelt, Vickers, Ralston, McGregor, Beaton, Rogic, Jota, Maeda, Forrest, and then we went through the substitutes earlier as you were talking about. That to me is about as strong a team as we can put out at the moment. You obviously could swap Ralston for Juranovic or Taylor for Juranovic perhaps. And obviously, you know, James Forrest for Abada would probably be the other one. What are your thoughts? Is it a case of perhaps that team played so well together last week that Ange will stick with it, or is he going to freshen it up again? What's your...
He never sticks with it, does he? He never sticks with it. He never plays the same. He very seldomly plays the same team. My own thoughts are that he might make one change, and I think he might bring in O'Reilly for Rogic. Right. Just rotate those two, and the rest as is. But he always likes to make a change. He's a wee, I say, tinker man, rotator man, I think we'll call him. You know what I mean? Big R, rotator man, because tinker man was claimed by Claudio Ranieri. So, but he likes to rotate. So if I was Ange, I would keep that team, more or less. And I just think that he likes to do something in order to just freshen things up a bit. But I don't think it needs totally freshened up, that team. But I think he might make one change, and it might be O'Reilly for Rogic. Could be wrong on that, because Rogic was good last week. But I thought O'Reilly, when he came on, was very good. That 15-minute cameo that he played, I thought he was really good. So it just led me to believe that he might say to him, right, I think I'll rotate you and Tom this week, because he likes to do that. But I think the other 10 that played, I can see them taking to the field again. But I thought Ralston was terrific. Gives you great width, and just his attitude's just immense, and has been all season. And I called Near Beaton Near Beckenbauer on Monday. You know what I mean? I wrote that in my manage. He was still. I was just looking, thinking, who is this colossus in the midfield? This Israeli international midfielder. He was terrific. So, but that's why Ange's in the position, isn't it? That's a big call if you're going to drop the big man now, isn't it? Because he was so good on Sunday. So, and he allowed McGregor to go forward, and he allowed Rogic, to advance. So that's, I'd be loath to make many changes to that team, and that's my predicted team, that I think you might go with O'Reilly for Rogic. I keep saying that slowly so I don't say O'Rogic, as I am prone to do. But yeah, that would be my team, Laura. I don't know about yourself. And Maeda would get the nod because I thought he did ever so well last week. And I just think it's about boosting guys' confidence levels, isn't it? Giakoumakis would have got the nod after Dundee, but he was ill, sadly. So I just think Maeda's, he's up there at the minute, and you want that feeling to continue. So let him play against Dundee United. See how it goes.
No, I would agree with the majority of that. Certainly, Maeda, I would keep in. I could see Rogic swapping out for O'Reilly. There's a couple of other ones that I thought about. Beaton, I would keep in. I think Hatate is perhaps still, for me, a little bit fatigued in terms of what I've seen of him, even when he did come on against Livingston. The only other couple I was looking at was maybe perhaps. What did you make of James Forrest's performance? Obviously, he did a great second half with a goal, but I think he did struggle a little bit in the first half to get into the game.
Do you think
Maeda making a swap for him this weekend?
Well, again, I go back to I think I would have swapped Forrest at half time on Sunday for Abada, but he came out in the second half and he had a brilliant second half. So I go on that kind of confidence levels thing. I think James Forrest, again, he's feeling pretty confident, and he was pretty sharp last week. I think he's earned the right to go and do it again against Dundee United and keep that momentum. It's all about momentum, isn't it? And I think if a guy has a decent game and then you might immediately whip him out the team, I think it's hard sometimes, to get any rhythm and fluency, and also it affects their confidence levels. I understand why he did it with Maeda and Giakoumakis, because you were trying to find a settled kind of centre forward. So at this moment in time, I'm about momentum and kind of that continuity. But again, I trying to second guess Ange's starting 11s. I've been trying to do it all season and don't know how many times I've got it spot on. I've got it a few times spot on, but you're always a kind of 8 or 9 mark, maybe 9 or 10 on a good day. So he just likes to freshen things up and just rotate. And it's maybe just a wee message to players to never hit a comfort zone. Don't think because you played well one week that you're going to be an automatic starter, which again, I think is a good thing, because it keeps every player on their toes, doesn't it? And it keeps them knowing that they're going to have to keep hitting that mark in order to be in the team. So I would give Forrest the nod, the benefit of the doubt, because I was pleased to see Forrest rediscover that, because again, there was a lot of people charting the demise of James Forrest. It's just preposterous, really, you know what I mean? But there you go. But again, it's their opinion, isn't it? And they're entitled to it. But Forrest's a big game player, and he came up with a big moment last week and took his goal really well. And I think his confidence grew after that. The second half, he just looked like a different player from the first half. He was a confident player the second half, and I just think if you can take that into Dundee United game, again, another valuable asset to have with Abada waiting in the wings to come on. It's quality, isn't it? You are replacing quality for quality, and that's what Ange's wanted all along.
I think that's exactly right. I think, we talked about that post-game. I was on with Kevin and Paul. I think it was after the Livingston game, actually, and we were talking about that exact thing. You look at the bench from last week, just sitting here in front of me, Giakoumakis, Abada, McCarthy, Ideguchi, Bain, O'Reilly, Hatate, Welsh, Juranovic. Majority of the players on that bench could come on and be equal level to whoever's on the field, and that's all you're asking for in terms of a squad game, is that we don't necessarily have a strongest 11. We have a system that works, that we can swap players in and out of, keep them fresh and keep them going. The only other change I was thinking about for Monday's game was, and I know there's a lot of discussion, some people are fans of Greg Taylor, some are not. Some are fans of Juranovic being in, whether it's in the left or right hand full-back position. Some want him only in the right-back position. My only thing about that is I want Juranovic in the team, but I would be loath to see Ralston be dropped after the performances he keeps putting in.
That's your dilemma, isn't it?
I don't know.
That's your dilemma that the manager has, and every time Anthony Ralston appears in the team, he gives you a reason for you not to drop him, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And you are accommodating other players at Ralston's behest then. But as long as the system and the shape, as you say, is fluid enough that Celtic can beat teams, then I don't think the manager cares who he upsets, to be honest. You know what I mean? And you look at Taylor, who's borne the brunt of a lot of criticism this season from Celtic supporters. He's not Celtic class, he's this or that. I mean, going back to what Jim likes to say, can you get better at left back? Yeah, you probably could. But has Greg Taylor performed badly recently? Not to my knowledge. But he was very good last week. He was very good in the games before. People are finding fault or wanting to find fault in Taylor. Whereas Ralston's the darling now, isn't he? So nobody says anything bad about Ralston, but a lot of that has to do with his performances anyway, because he's been terrific when he's came in. He's been rotated, but there's never a drop in attitude, is there, or application whenever he comes back in? It's always spot on. So I think that all the players who are rotated, and don't see it as dropped or axed, it's just rotation. But if they all come in with that same attitude and commitment as Ralston, then it augurs well going forward. And you named that bench there, and you said that they're all of similar quality. I mean, it's arguable that some are of better quality than the actual starting 11, which then you go back to a bigger question is, what is Celtic's strongest starting 11? You get no agreement on that. I don't even think the manager knows, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, rather than it being a negative, it's actually a positive.
Yeah, and I mean that as a positive because he's got a plethora of riches and an embarrassment of riches to play in various positions. And I can imagine every week he gets to Friday and he thinks, all right, I'm going to have to pick my team for whatever game. But it's the great headache to have, isn't it? Because, Ralston and Juranovic are two great right backs. Do you bring back Ralston or do you keep Juranovic and Taylor? That kind of stuff. These are things that Ange himself tells you, these are the things in football that he loves, the challenges that he relishes. And if you were to pin him down and say, what's your strongest 11, it would take him forever to name it. Because he wouldn't know in terms of, he would have a rough idea, but then he would, you would end up saying, but I could play him there and him there and him there and do all sorts. So it's, I think that's a good thing. And it's a good thing for the manager as well. It keeps him on his toes, and I think that's why he's prone to rotating. Not because he doesn't know his strongest 11, I just think he's always thinking, well, this player can do me a job in this game against this opposition. So that's why there's a myriad of things going around his head, which is probably why you don't see the same team every week, if that makes any kind of sense.
It does. The mystery has deepened. As always, Tony, you've left me with more questions than answers.
I'll do a dizzying intellect or lack of.
Yes. But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully this time on Tuesday we'll be still in the Scottish Cup. I'm really hoping the way we've been playing that we will be, but we will wait and see what happens. As always, with the Celtic State of Mind, we will be covering the game live half an hour before kick-off, at half-time and at full-time. And if you're not going to the game or if you're not watching it elsewhere, then please tune in and watch it with us, because you know we talk more sense than all the other outlets out there.
Or nonsense.
Or nonsense, yeah, let's put it that way.
Nonsense.
Tony, thanks very much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks everybody for watching. We will see you again very, very soon.